With my read aloud series of Indian economic development textbook for class 11th, I go on to unit 3. So we finished with unit 1, which was about the development policies and experience right from 1947 independence to 1990. So it consisted of chapter 1, that is Indian economy on the eve of independence, and chapter 2, Indian economy 1950 to 1990, the goals of the 5-year plans, etc. Then we also did the unit 2, that is economic reform since 1991, and that was all covered in chapter number 3, which was named as liberalization, privatization and globalization and appraisal. And right now I'm going to read unit 3, current challenges facing the Indian economy, and in that the chapter 4 deals with poverty. So unit 3, current challenges facing the Indian economy, and you have poverty. So once we finish poverty, that is, after studying this chapter, we will be able to know about the various attributes of poverty. Then we will be able to understand the diverse dimensions relating to the concept of poverty, and we'll be able to examine or appreciate critically the way poverty is estimated, and we'll be able to appreciate and be able to assess existing poverty alleviation programs. So this is what we are going to do. Okay. As usual, the chapter begins with a quote, and this is from Adam Smith, and that's why I'm reading. No society can surely be flourishing and happy of which the far greater part of the members are poor and miserable. Okay, so now we are going to we'll see the introduction. In previous chapters, you have studied the economic policies that India has taken in the last 5.5 decades and the outcome of these policies with relation to the various developmental indicators, providing minimum basic needs to the people and reduction of poverty have been the major aims of independent India. The pattern of development that the successive 5-year plans envisaged laid emphasis on the upliftment of the poorest of the poor, Antodaya, integrating the poor into the mainstream and achieving a minimum standard of living for all. While addressing the Constituent Assembly in 1947, Jawaharlal Nehru had said, "This achievement, that is independence, is but a step, an opening of opportunity to the great triumphs and achievements that await us. The ending of poverty and ignorance and disease and inequality of opportunity." However, we need to know where we stand today. Poverty is not only a challenge for India, as more than 1/5 of the world's poor live in India alone, but also for the world, where about 300 million people are not able to meet their basic needs. Poverty has many faces, which have been changing from place to place and across time, and has been described in many ways. Most often, poverty is a situation that people want to escape. So poverty is a call to action for the poor and the wealthy alike, a call to change the world so that many more may have enough to eat, adequate shelter, access to education and health, protection from violence, and a voice in what happens in their communities. To know what helps to reduce poverty, what works and what does not, what changes over time, poverty has to be defined, measured and studied and even experienced. As poverty has many dimensions, it has to be looked at through a variety of indicators: levels of income and consumption, social indicators, and indicators of vulnerability to risk and of socio-political access. Who are the poor? You would have noticed that in all localities and neighborhoods, both in rural and urban areas, there are some of us who are poor and some who are rich. Read the story of Anu and Sudha. That's given in a box, we'll read it later. Their lives are examples of the two extremes. So we'll do that in box 4.1. There are also people who belong to the many stages in between. Pushcart vendors, street cobblers, women who string flowers, rag pickers, vendors, and beggars are some examples of poor and vulnerable groups in urban areas. The poor people possess few assets and reside in kacha hutments with walls made of baked mud and roofs made of grass, thatch, bamboo, and wood. The poorest of them do not even have such dwellings. In rural areas, many of them are landless. Even if some of them possess land, it is only dry or wasteland. Many do not get to have even 2 meals a day. Starvation and hunger are the key features of the poorest households. The poor lack basic literacy and skills and hence have very limited economic opportunities. Poor people also face unstable employment. Malnutrition is alarmingly high among the poor. Ill health, disability, or serious illness makes them physically weak. They borrow from money lenders who charge high rates of interest that lead them into chronic indebtedness. The poor are highly vulnerable. They are not able to negotiate their legal wages from employers and are exploited. Most poor households have no access to electricity. Their primary cooking fuel is firewood and cow dung cake. A large section of poor people do not even have access to safe drinking water. There is evidence of extreme gender inequality in the participation of gainful employment, education, and in decision making within the family. Poor women receive less care on their way to motherhood. Their children are less likely to survive or be born healthy. Scholars identify the poor on the basis of their occupation and ownership of assets. They state that the rural poor work mainly as landless agricultural laborers, cultivators with very small holdings, landless laborers who are engaged in a variety of non-agricultural jobs, and tenant cultivators with small land holdings. The urban poor are largely the overflow of the rural poor who had migrated to urban areas in search of alternative employment and livelihood. Laborers who do a variety of casual jobs and the self-employed who sell a variety of things on the roadside and are engaged in various activities.